welcome back to FNAF Explained. Today, we're taking a break. Well, a break from the games. Today we're talking about the books. Yes, in case you didn't know, FNAF has a whole series of books. Well, actually, two series. See, there's the original Silver Eyes Trilogy, and there's the new Fazbear Fright series. Today we're covering the first series, since the second one is a bit more advanced. The first series actually explains a fair amount of questions that we've had up until this point. And that's why I haven't answered some, and I've left some threads dangling up until now, because, as is common with this series, a lot of things get explained later on, and there's kinda some cliffhangers, you know? So yes, today we are talking about the Silver Eyes Trilogy. Now, first I'm going to go through a basic explanation of the plot. I highly recommend you read these books yourself. You can find them all over the place, they're pretty cheap, and there's even some free audiobooks here on YouTube if you want to check those out. And they're pretty well written. I mean, these books, it's kind of hesitant when you're writing a book about a video game. Usually that's pretty hard to do, especially for FNAF, where up until this point, the story hadn't really been conveyed normally. You had 8-bit minigames, secret Easter eggs, so telling a traditional story seemed to be a bit of a challenge, but it worked out really well. So let's go through a basic explanation of the story of these books, and then I'll go and I'll explain how this connects to the games. So first of all, I need to make this very clear, as I kind of hinted at just now, the games and the books are very different timelines. There's the games timeline, and there's the books timeline, and those are very different things. They are not the same story, but Scott has made it clear that the games and the books do have common elements, and you can use the books to solve the games, and vice versa. Alright, so let's get into the first book, The Silver Eyes. Apparently, while I was trying to delete old footage from a different video, I deleted one of the clips from this one, and so now I have to go all the way back and re-record some of the footage that I deleted. Well, all of the footage that I deleted. Alright, where were we? I recorded this like a week ago, man. Oh, yeah, okay. We were just about to start The Silver Eyes. The Silver Eyes begins with a girl named Charlie, who used to live in a town named Hurricane, Utah, but no longer lives there after she moved away after a certain tragedy happened. She's now coming back to the town on the 10th anniversary of the tragedy. We don't find out quite what it was yet, but it involved a boy named Michael. So her and all of her friends are coming back to the town in memory of whatever happened to Michael. She also is the daughter of the creator of these pizzerias, Henry. So yeah, we now actually have a name for the creator of these pizzerias and the man who made these animatronics. In fact, throughout the whole book, we're following his daughter, so pretty interesting stuff. Her and her friends come back to the town, and they decide to go back to Freddy's, which is where they all hang out when they were growing up. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Now, it's been closed down for years, and they started trying to build over it after it closed down. But instead of just demolishing it, they decided to build over it. So the kids find a way inside, they explore a little bit, and then they leave. That's really all that happens on their first time there. They show up, and they look around for a bit, and they leave. Not much happens. But they do discover that the old animatronics are still there. Also, something bad happened to Charlie's father, Henry, but we don't know what it is yet, either. Just like we don't know what happened to Michael. And he actually made her some completely unique animatronics, stuff that we haven't even seen before in the series. There's a unicorn named Stanley, there's a bunny named Theodore, and there's a doll named Ella. Which, Ella will become important later, so will Theodore. Stanley's just he's just kind of there. And so Charlie and one of her friends, John, now decide to go back to her father's old workshop and take a look around. And this is kind of where we get a bit more revealed about what happened to Michael. See, it's very similar to what happens in the games. There's a missing children's incident. Some kids go missing, and they're never found, and Michael was one of them. But John says he saw someone in a yellow rabbit suit the night that Michael disappeared. Very interesting detail. And if you've been following along for the episodes that happened before this, you know this is Springtrap. But obviously, since the books take place in a different story than the games, maybe he didn't become Springtrap in this story. We'll get to that. So the kids go back a third time, and might I say they go back a ton of times in this book. It feels like they could have probably cut a bit of that out as well, but it works. And they find an old security camera system used to watch the place. They also find controls that, well, control the animatronics, make them go through their little dances. But Charlie gets too close to one, Foxy, who she's afraid of, and her arm gets cut by his hook when they press the button to make his hook move. So clearly there's some sort of deep-seated fear she has of this animatronic, and that's for an interesting reason that we'll get to. See, she remembers something. She remembers another restaurant, another pizzeria, with a yellow Freddy and a yellow Bonnie, just like John remembered the night of Michael's disappearance. They realize there must have been another pizzeria before Freddy's, and so Charlie and John go to investigate and find this place. And they do. This doesn't reveal anything particularly interesting, but it gives us our first real look at Fredbear's Family Diner, the place where Golden Freddy and Spring Bonnie come from originally. They go back to the pizzeria again, they find the security guard, he catches them wandering around the place, and they agree not to cause any trouble, and he'll go along with them so they can still explore. But he's a pretty creepy guy. His name is Dave, and he has some weird moon-shaped scars on his neck. Very fishy. And as they're about to leave the pizzeria again, Carlton, one of the characters, gets captured by this man. See, Dave takes the yellow Spring Bonnie suit, which is stuffed away in storage in one of the closets, and he kidnaps Carlton. Uh-oh. Eventually, together, they decide to go back to the pizzeria, save Carlton, and it's revealed that Dave, the night guard, is actually
purple guy.
And only in this universe, he ain't dead. He ain't trapped in Spring Bonnie. Yet. See, they get Carlton, they rescue him, and everyone's about to leave the restaurant all happy-like, when Dave comes up behind them, grabs Charlie, and she spring-locks him. Now, if you remember, the spring locks are the little mechanisms inside of the suit that transform it to robot mode. If you activate that while someone's in the suit, all the robot parts puncture their body, and it's pretty bad. And this is what she does to Dave, just like what happened in the games, and it turns him into Springtrap. They all leave, it's a happy ending. Sure, we don't know what happened to him after that, but we'll save that for the sequel. So what does this really mean for the books? Well, one, it gives us a much better look at these pizzerias, both the original and Fredbear's Family Diner. It gives us another look at these characters, and it gives us some actual names for these characters. And while we don't get any huge revelations, there's some pretty interesting stuff in this book, and I definitely recommend a read. Now, the second book, The Twisted Ones, really cuts back on the characters. You have Charlie, John, Jessica, and Carlton's father, Clay Burke. He's a police chief. Now, this one also strays a lot farther from the games because you have an entirely new set of animatronics, the Twisted animatronics, which is why it's called the Twisted Ones. See, a bunch of bodies are being discovered around town, ones with spring-lock scars like Dave had. So these people have been spring-locked and they've died in the middle of fields, in the middle of nowhere, and no one can really find out why until Charlie and her friends discover some twisted animatronics. Now, these are really grotesque, ugly versions of the normal animatronics, and the way these ones work is through a new piece of technology called illusion discs. Now, illusion discs emit a high-pitched frequency that tricks your brain into thinking something's there when it really isn't. Because of this, you don't really have to decorate these animatronics anymore, give them the hats, the bunny ears, the chicken beak. What the illusion discs do is fill it in for your brain, make your brain see what it expects to see there. You expect to see these lovable characters, that's what you'll see. But if you're like Charlie and you're scarred by these things and they're terrifying to you, you'll see these grotesque versions. It all depends on who you are. Now, these weren't designed by Charlie's father, they were designed by William Afton, the killer. He has a lot of names. And it's revealed that, yes, William and Henry were partners. They both owned this establishment. They both created these animatronics. Which is really messed up when you consider the fact that one of the missing children is revealed to be Charlie's brother, Sammy. Which means that her father's business partner killed his business partner's kid. I mean, it's all very, very messed up. In the end, William himself shows up again as Springtrap, further cementing the idea that maybe he and Purple Guy are the same character just in different timelines since there's so many similarities. Charlie and him fight, the twisted animatronics come, and the normal animatronics actually help to fight off these twisted ones. It's all very crazy. Again, I recommend you read these yourself. And so it's kind of revealed that the normal animatronics aren't really evil, they're out after their killer. So there's this really interesting battle, and at the end of the book, Charlie dies, which I'm sure is pretty confusing since there's another book yet. I mean, who's the main character of that one? But again, we'll get to that. So that's pretty much the end of this book. It goes some crazy directions, but what does it mean for the games and for the rest of the series? Well, the main thing is the illusion discs. The illusion discs could explain a lot of things we see in this series. One big debate is whether the nightmare animatronics from FNAF 4 are real or fake in the crying child's mind. Just real nightmares. The illusion discs could explain that. They could be making the crying child see these animatronics when they're not really there. It's all very iffy. It's an interesting idea, but it's not much more than that at this point. And of course, the connections between William Afton and Purple Eye just become cemented so much further. Now for the final and most impactful book here. The Fourth Closet. Now the Fourth Closet is a very interesting one. Obviously, Charlie is dead, and so we follow John for the majority of the novel, her friend. John is convinced that something is wrong because Charlie has shown up again. Charlie has shown up again, and everyone else in the town has accepted that, yes, this is Charlie. But John doesn't seem to think so. She looks just a bit off to him, just a bit wrong. He can't quite place what it is, but she doesn't seem to be Charlie to him, and that convinces him enough that he starts coming up with all these crazy conspiracy theories as to who she could be. Meanwhile, a new pizzeria has opened up in town, Circus Baby's Pizza World, which features clown animatronics and stuff. These are the actual animatronics we meet in the next game, so I'm going to talk about these again, so keep these in mind. They don't play into the story very much in this book, but they become very important in the next game, so we'll get to that. In the end, it's revealed that Charlie is actually Circus Baby, the main animatronic of this establishment. Well, the fake Charlie, at least. See, John is right. This isn't Charlie. This is a robot who is, pretending to be Charlie. And this is where the story takes some really weird turns. It really jumps the shark. A lot of people don't like this book because it just goes in so many crazy directions. And the first one is that this animatronic, Circus Baby, has an illusion disc that can make her look like basically anyone she wants, but mostly Charlie. Also, a new series of kidnappings has begun in the town. New children have just started disappearing, and it's revealed that fake Charlie, Circus Baby, has been capturing them. Meanwhile, John and Jessica find the real Charlie in her aunt's house, in a box. You see what I'm talking about? This story goes in some crazy directions, and I don't know what to make of it. So Charlie's just found in a box here, and somehow it's revealed that she survived. We still don't know how she survived, but she did. And then it's revealed, as Elizabeth comes to try and stop them, that Charlie's a robot too. See, Sammy, Charlie's brother, wasn't actually the one William Afton caught. It was Charlie who was caught, and she was killed by William Afton. And then her father, in his grief, made a series of robots of Charlie, made to look like Charlie. One was a baby, one was a toddler, one was a child, one was a teen. And what am I saying? Yeah, do you see now why I'm talking about why people don't like this book very much? I mean, a person who is an animatronic, it's insane. This is completely ridiculous stuff. But all the same, it is what goes on in this story, and it's so strange. Basically, the story ends with this new series of kidnapped children escaping, with Circus Babies being burned to the ground. William is revealed to be alive again after he supposedly died in the last one. We'll get to him in a second and what he means here, but Charlie dies. She gets stabbed by the robot her father built to kill himself. It goes everywhere. But what the main thing I want to focus on is what this means for the games, as with the other books. The first thing is, William's goal in this story isn't just to kidnap children again. He's trying to become immortal. See, he's found out that these animatronics are possessed. And because of that, he can't die. He's trying to find a way to use that knowledge to make himself immortal, without having to die and possess an animatronic. And so he's slowly replacing bits of himself with machine parts. How does he know this is going to work? Well, because of a little thing called Remnant. This is the first time Remnant is brought up in the series, but it's not the last. See, Remnant is a kind of soul juice. Bear with me here. It basically is what causes possession, and you can take it out of a robot that's been possessed and put it into other things to possess them. It's kind of paranormal / sci-fi. It's very interesting. And this is the biggest thing from these books that shows up later in the series as well. And it does get explained a lot more later on. The other thing is a person becoming a robot, which, while we don't have any solid things that happen in the games that kind of parallel with this, we have some ideas and we'll get to them later on. in future episodes. Overall, this book series just goes in some crazy directions. It's absolutely insane, and I don't know what to make of it. But I hope I explained things pretty well. Hope I explained how this connects to the games pretty well. Now we're going to cross over to the part of the video for older fans, where I talk about deeper unsolved mysteries, and trust me, there's a lot in this one. Now I know I just ragged on the writing in this series a lot, but it really is rather well written. I mean, in the very first book, and you may not know this, you probably won't, but there is see, when Charlie goes back to her father's workshop for the first time in years, she finds what looks to be tripod marks in the ground. Obviously, at the end of the series, it's revealed that she is a robot and that all of her memories were created with a camera tripod, as crazy as that sounds. So that's a nice little callback to the beginning, where she finds these tripod marks. It's really interesting because it proves that these ideas that Scott had in the fourth closet have been here since the very beginning of the series, as crazy and made up as they may seem. Which makes me think he definitely had a reason for making Charlie a robot, for making all this stuff happen, because it was planned from the very beginning. What's most interesting about this book is probably William. I mean, he literally died, right? He died, he became Springtrap, somehow he could still talk, and now he's not Springtrap anymore. Well, he kinda still is, though. But he isn't? And what's he trying to do with Remnant anyway? How did he discover Remnant? Did he just go from being a complete psychopath to being a deranged mad scientist guy? I mean, what happened to this guy? I have no answers for this. William just seems to be a really inconsistent character in this series. I mean, at first, he was kind of hiding his madness and weird killeriness behind his whole Dave facade. But then once he was revealed, well, then he went completely insane, especially when he was Springtrap. And now he just kind of seemed like a tired old man who was, tinkering around in his workshop in the back of his old restaurant. It doesn't make any sense, dude. And speaking of Remnant, Remnant doesn't make any sense either, at least in this point. Later on in the series, it's explained a bit more, but just at this point, it's like, ugh, no. Speaking of which, what about Charlie? I mean, Charlie makes no sense in this book either. She's supposed to be a robot, like Elizabeth, Circus Baby. But she eats. She bleeds. She seems to be able to die. Does she grow, or does she stay a teenager forever? And if she ever wanted to have children, how would that work? None of this makes any sense. Now, I know this part of the video is supposed to answer questions, the unsolved things that we are trying to figure out, or at least give my hypotheses, but, I mean, even the ending, what does the ending mean? There's that girl who shows up. Is it Charlie? Is it Elizabeth? Is it someone else entirely? Maybe it's Jessica? Who? I mean, at least the fake blood thing from the Twisted Ones makes sense now. I mean, we thought it was Dave's at that time, but then he said it wasn't his fake blood because he really died. And now we know it's probably Charlie's since she got injured there and she's a robot, so she wouldn't have real blood. If she did have real blood, that would be really concerning. You know what? When I started this series, I said I was going to answer unanswered questions in this segment of the video. I know that. But I think I'm just gonna end the video here because I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'll come back to this some other time. I need some time to think. This is just so... Okay, bye.